Welcome to the Remembering a Life podcast. I'm your host, Holly Ignatowski. Today we're talking with Beth Johnson from Ultimate Canine in Westfield, Indiana, and Bob Prout and Julia Prout from Prout Funeral Home in Verona, New Jersey, about therapy dogs and how they can play an important role in helping people after they've experienced the death of a loved one. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, but I think we can all agree that the real star of the show is Morris V. Prout, the therapy dog that joined Prout Funeral Home earlier this year. Now, I understand he's busy working right now and isn't able to join us for the interview, but thank you to Beth, Julia, and Bob for joining me today to tell Morris's story. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I'm going to direct my first question to Beth. So we often hear about therapy dogs in hospitals, nursing homes, hospices, group homes, but it makes perfect sense that therapy dogs could also play a role in helping people who are grieving. Now, how prevalent is the use of therapy dogs in funeral homes? And Beth, what role do they play in helping people who visit the funeral home?
Sure. Actually, funeral home grief therapy dogs, it's becoming more and more of a very important tool for funeral homes all over the country. What we've noticed at Ultimate Canine is that there are more and more funeral homes interested in having therapy dogs. As a matter of fact, we've probably placed over 40 therapy dogs in funeral homes over the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years. So it's becoming much more prevalent. And really, they play a very interesting role. It's just interacting with a grief therapy dog really is almost a natural mood booster. There's actually scientific evidence that it really helps increase kind of serotonin, dopamine levels, all those endorphins that kind of boost your overall mental well-being. But also, they just kind of, they help lower anxiety and stress, and can really be a communication icebreaker. So really help people kind of relax, be able to express their feelings, their emotions, their wants, their needs, that sort of thing.
And Bob, why did you decide to get a therapy dog for your funeral home?
To be honest with you, it wasn't really on my radar screen. My daughter became licensed 4 or 5 years ago, and she brought the topic up, and I'll let her kind of answer that one.
Okay.
So, beyond wanting a dog since I was a kid, I had read an article about a funeral director down south, I believe in Georgia, and he had just gotten a therapy dog. Now, this was about in 2016, so the concept was still relatively new. And the article was talking about how he was flying home during the holidays, and there were delays at the airport, and everybody's flights were grounded, and people were very stressed. But there was an adorable little puppy on his flight who just sort of made the rounds going from person to person. And he started realizing as he was petting this dog, how his stress levels were starting to come down. And in such an emotionally charged environment like a funeral, the same concept could be applied to his business, to his funeral home. So I started looking into different breeds that were better for therapy dogs, how to train a dog, period, how to train a therapy dog. And one thing that was sort of holding us back was that it seemed to be really contingent on the individual dog's temperament and personality. And we were a little nervous about picking out a dog ourselves from a litter, doing all this training, and then realizing that the dog might not be well suited to a funeral home setting. As luck would have it, in 2020, my father and I did a webinar. We participated in a webinar with the National Funeral Directors Association about therapy dogs, and Beth was on it with Ultimate Canine, and it was probably the best webinar because we got to sit there and watch these adorable dogs, on this webinar. And I think that that's really what sold my parents on it, listening to how these dogs impacted not just the funeral directors, but also their communities. So then we started looking into it, and Ultimate Canine, we just felt very comfortable with how they go about choosing the right dog for each funeral home.
So, Julia and Bob, tell us a little bit about Morris specifically. I've seen pictures of him. He is absolutely adorable. That face is so sweet, and he's got his little stuffed toys. I know he's also a very hard worker, though. Does he live in the funeral home? Does he live with you? Tell us about him.
Meg and I, my wife and I, live above the funeral home, and Julia is in a house in the back, so we're all kind of in and around the same area at all times. But he knows when he puts on that red vest, he knows it's all work. And it's really incredible to see the whole mood change. He could be running around playing, and he's a 15-month-old puppy. You put the red vest on, and he knows that it's all work. He is absolutely mindful of families as they come in. He is very mindful and is like the ultimate gentleman as far as the work itself is concerned. As we go through the park in the morning without the vest, he still has that great temperament, and he's very easygoing. I can't tell you how many little children come up and they get their first introduction to really interacting with animals with Morris. And I kind of warn the parents that not all dogs are created equal when it comes to not nipping. So he's been really a great addition to our staff, both for the staff as well as the public.
That's amazing that he puts that red vest on and he's just in work mode. So talk about that, Beth. How do you train a dog? How did you train Morris to work in a funeral home and with the staff?
Well, it really starts very, very early. At Ultimate Canine, we are not breeders. We are trainers, but we work with a couple of specific breeders that are our preferred breeders because, number one, we like their methodology. We also like the fact that they're very mindful of health and genetics and that sort of thing. But it all starts in the litter. So as soon as the puppies are born, they are actually born in a home-like setting. That's another reason why we work with these breeders. We like the fact that all of their puppies are born in a home-like setting, in a personal home. They immediately start interacting and socializing with family members of all ages. And then as they get to the point where they can walk and their eyes are open, then they start actually going to puppy parties as a litter with their mom, and they're going to preschools and nursing homes and all kinds of situations where they're just getting used to being handled, and they're used to all kinds of different surfaces and sounds and all of that sort of thing. So once they reach the 8 to 9 week old stage where they're ready to leave the litter, we actually have them come into our facility, and we put each of those puppies through a temperament test. And in that temperament test, we're looking at 20 different factors, and the puppy can score anywhere from 1 to 10 on each of those factors. And we're looking at what life's work kind of suits them. So it may be service dog, it may be therapy, it may be just a family pet. But the biggest thing we're looking for with a potential therapy dog is, again, that natural curiosity, that natural tendency to want to go meet people. They're not scared of people. They're not even a little skittish about it. They just want to work that room and meet everybody they can. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at even at that young age. Once if they're selected for our program and we decide they would make a good therapy dog, then they go next to a puppy trainer, and that's where they really start their all of the, everything from housebreaking to all of their solid obedience training, their sit, stays, downs, comes, that sort of thing. And then once they reach all of their benchmarks with their obedience training, then they go to a more advanced trainer. And we are doing things like really getting them out in public and real-life situations that they would be with as a therapy dog. We're hardening those obedience skills out in public. We are teaching them some special commands that they can put in their toolbox, like snuggle and visit and go say hi and a handshake, a fist bump, all of those things that they can use as they interact with families and people in public. So we're teaching them all of those things. So it really is about, once they come to the advanced trainer, it's about a 4-month program at that point in time. So.
And Bob, what about the staff? Did you have to train the staff to bring Morris in?
Actually, Beth flew in from Indianapolis to New Jersey with Morris, and Beth stayed here for 3 or 4 days and trained everybody on the staff. It was something that we've never really quite done in such intensity. It was kind of fun. At the end of it, I asked Beth if she could supply a red vest for each member of the staff, because it seemed like the red vest was a good signal for Morris to start to go to work, and I wish I had one for each of the adult members of the staff. But Beth went through all the commands with us, actually told us how to handle them on a leash, even if public were here, both from a liability as well as just a general safety concern. So it was a rather intensive couple of days, and we certainly appreciate Beth's time that when she came in, because we felt like she was part of the family by the time she left, and Morris certainly fit right in.
Julia, can you talk about Morris's workday, what kind of work he does, how many hours he works?
Sure. So, as a high-level employee here, he really doesn't log hours per se, but he is just always here, present in the office. He'll be here to meet with families when families first come in to make arrangements or pre-arrangements. He comes right into the room. Usually people see him in his bed and they request that he comes in. So it's sort of funny. He kind of knows when they're requesting to have him in there, because he gets up and he shows them right into the conference room. He works each visiting that we've had since he's gotten here. He's there to greet people at the door, and funerals, visitings. He just sort of does it all, our official greeter.
So he's there not only during the funeral, but also when people are coming to make the arrangements, so they get to meet him right from the start.
Exactly. That's really their first introduction to Morris, and everyone who's come in so far has just absolutely fallen in love with him. I think it definitely brings some of the apprehension people are feeling down a bit, because you just have this adorable little face staring up at you and curling up at your feet, or just laying next to you so you can just stroke him. And I think when you're trying to make difficult decisions that often come up as you're arranging a funeral, there's definitely an increased sense of comfort having Morris there. And every single time people go to leave, they ask and they make sure, now Morris is going to be at visiting and at the funeral, and we have to reassure them, yes, we've actually had people want to reschedule their wakes around Morris's grooming schedule because they want to make sure that he will be there for their family.
Wow. So people can request to have a therapy dog or Morris at your funeral home. It's not just automatic. How does that work?
It's automatic, really. Like I said, when they come first to make arrangements, he's always here. We've never had anybody say that they don't want to have him there. Just really people just ask us again to make sure that he's definitely going to be there for visiting. The only time, like I said, the only time he really wouldn't be around is if he's going to the groomer or if he's going to the library for one of his programs. He does a Paws and Pages program at the library. So he does have some standing appointments throughout the month that we need to make sure he makes. But otherwise, he's just a constant here at the funeral home.
So obviously he's been very well received by the families you serve. Is there a particular touching story you might be able to share with us about that, Bob or Julia?
Yeah, we've had a couple of families recently that have the fact that they have a grandchild or grandchildren with special concerns, and they weren't sure how the child would act or react when seeing the grandparent in a casket or during the course of the funeral. And in each case, Morris has met the whole family and then stays particularly near that grandchild, either in the viewing room or in an adjacent room. And I think the families have been kind of totally wowed by the fact that the reaction to the death has been so much calmer having Morris there. The dog just has an intuitive way about him, and he can detect whose needs are going to be greatest, and he can kind of be near that child a little bit more. And it seems to have worked incredibly well. I have to say that the families that we have, as Julia said, at this point, we're not asking people if they would like to have him come in. It's like he's part of the staff and he's just there, and the community has reacted accordingly. That the families that come in all mention that they've seen Morris around town, they've seen Morris on Facebook or Instagram. He has his own following, and they just presume that Morris is going to be here as much as any of our directors.
There's no doubt that there's just a special connection between kids and dogs, and in a funeral situation that can be overwhelming for adults, it's just got to be like a different planet for children. And to have that comfort there, that dog there is just invaluable. So what role do the therapy dogs play in helping people to move forward in their own grief?
I'm not sure whether the dogs in and of themselves help them move forward. I think what it does is it creates an environment that's less institutional and more home-like, so that they feel more comfortable looking at their grief, if that's possible. I think that having the dog here, having Morris certainly, I can't speak for other funeral homes that may have dogs, whether they're trained or not, but I think having Morris here sort of just gives them that home-like feel, that sort of life raft in the middle of a storm that they can feel comfortable with, and in that comfort level then start to face the other issues that they're going to have as a new normal. And I think that's the best way to describe it, is that he's creating just this very calming sense that life will go on, and people can start to come to grips a little bit easier because of that calming sense that he portrays.
And just sort of to go off of that, we definitely see that not just with children, but with adults as well, because we have had family members come back after the funeral just to sort of pop in because they wanted to see Morris, and they just needed some time with Morris. So he comes down and he'll just sit there and cuddle and snuggle up to them for as long as they may need.
I had one family who said, having a therapy dog is great while we're here, but you should be like a library and start lending these dogs out to families because they're so well trained. It would be like a turnkey operation for us.
Get a little Morris card like in the library. I would imagine that Morris is very helpful to your staff members as well, because from an outsider looking in, I would think that, working in the funeral industry can have stresses of its own.
Yes, but it's not only the stresses of working in the industry. I think most everybody who works within the funeral profession in their own way come to grip with what we're dealing with, and there's got to be a separation, because you're being hired or looked upon as somebody to help that family through the time of trauma, not to wallow in it yourself. But the best help, as far as Morris and the staff is concerned, is that they're the everyday issues that everybody faces. And Morris is always here with a friendly face when the staff come in. Everybody wants to see Morris first, get the yellow duck and be able to toss it around with them, and then put the vest on and go to work. So I think it's just not only for the families that we serve, but for the staff also. It just sort of grounds everybody and reconnects and helps them start the day so much better.
And it's not just our staff. There are several cemeteries that we visit, the offices that we visit, who ask us to bring Morris into their office as well, because maybe they're having a stressful day or two, and they just love it when he walks in the door with his goofy, loving personality, and he just makes their day that much better. He's been invited to some holiday parties, in fact, just because he's had such an impact on other offices as well.
So he has a better social life than you, is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
What if, I don't know if this is for Bob or Beth or Julia, but what if my local funeral home doesn't have a therapy dog, but I would really like one? Can you request one, or is this something that really needs to be done in-house?
I would say it's best in-house, only because, you were mentioning the library card, Morris. It's very difficult to get a dog that is totally trained and knows what he or she should or shouldn't be doing in the course of a service. There are many friends, I'm sure you know a lot of people that say, oh, my dog is just the friendliest dog, everything is fine. And then this boxer comes up and is slobbering all over your dress or your slacks, and you wonder, well, it might be friendly, but it's not cut out to be a work dog.
Well, I think the other issue, too, is that, and I'm sure Beth can speak to this, is that no matter how friendly your dog is at home, not all dogs really feel comfortable in a crowded room full of strangers, and being in a new space with a bunch of people that this dog does not know can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, getting them used to those situations is really a big part of the training. However, to your point, there are trained therapy dog, like volunteers who have a therapy dog, and they've been trained and certified. A lot of them do visits to nursing homes and hospitals and so forth. And I think that if there was a funeral home that wanted to kind of put their toe in the water just to test it, to see if that's something that would be for them, maybe they would be able to find that resource within their community and, work out something with an actual trained volunteer and their trained and certified therapy dog.
Now, I understand, Bob and Julia, that Morris is also the Director of Community Engagement for the funeral home. I myself have actually liked his Facebook and Instagram pages. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means, what that title means?
Sure. So Morris does a lot of community outreach. He has a lot of responsibilities on his little shoulders. And every other Monday, he'll go to one of the local nursing homes and rehab centers to visit with patients. He has some standing reservations there. And he'll cuddle up with people, he'll do some tricks. And then if there's anybody, there for rehab, they've had a long, tiring day, so they always enjoy seeing Morris and playing with him and just getting a load of that cute and cuddly face. He also goes to a dementia unit and visits with residents there, and he just started a Paws and Pages program at our local library. And once a month, he will go to the library, and there will be a new reader there to practice their reading. Sometimes kids might feel a little apprehensive reading out loud, or they might feel a little apprehensive around dogs. So in either case, reading to Morris is a lot less intimidating than reading to a room full of your peers or, meeting Morris one-on-one. Such a friendly and loving dog definitely helps to break down those barriers.
And then also, every funeral home is very involved in the community. So what we've decided is that Morris will take over that position. Morris can sponsor a Little League team at the end of the school season. He was invited to join with the team for the team pictures. Our Clergy Association in town had been trying to figure out a way of gathering people for something ecumenical, and Morris stepped forward and is planning September 24th, next month, I guess month and a half, will be sponsoring a roundtable discussion of the Rule of St. Benedict. And what it will be is that there is a very well-known, nationally known author and lecturer who happens to be an Episcopal priest, the Reverend Jane Tomaine, and she will be leading a roundtable discussion with a member of the Order of St. Benedict at the Newark Abbey. and they will both be talking about the Rule of St. Benedict and how it sort of goes beyond Catholicism, that it's a guide for living, and Morris is sponsoring that. And there are a couple other things that we'll be having Morris sponsor in the coming.
He's also volunteered with me with the Junior Women's Club of Verona, helping us sell our 50/50 tickets. The big draw to get people to come to our table is, of course, to see Morris, and then we can sort of reel them in. So we quickly realized that the juniors and I quickly realized that having Morris there was a cincher in selling our fundraising tickets.
It's good for business, for sure. So he is very busy. What does he like to do on his off time for fun?
Well, he loves to go to the park. He has a whole slew of other pups that he likes to frolic with. He loves to play in the splash pad when the weather is hot. He has all his squeaky toys. And he just, when you take the vest off and he's off the clock, he becomes a 15-month-old puppy. He wants to go out. He wants to play. He wants to be the center of attention. It's really kind of incredible. He just, he reverts to being a pup. A very well-trained pup, but he's a pup.
I love it. You know, we ask all our guests who they're remembering, and I'm wondering if there is a special pet or other animal that you're thinking of today. Beth, I'll start with you.
Oh, Lewis, my Labradoodle, who has passed on, is always on my mind. So, and he is today as well.
Julia?
I'd have to say my grandmother, my father's mother, because she was such a huge animal lover and really sparked my interest in and love of animals.
And what about you, Bob?
I had Lassie, a border collie, growing up. Lassie was 2 years old when I was born, and Lassie taught me how to walk. If I was out in the front yard, Lassie would sort of corral me and bring me back to the backyard. And Morris is a lot like that, you know, very, very calm, patient pup.
Well, Beth, Julia, and Bob, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing a little bit about Morris. And yes, you can follow him on Facebook and Instagram at Morris V. Prout. It's just, he's a sweet, sweet pup, and thank you for the work that you're doing in helping others to ease their grief with this sweet, caring creature.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
To learn more about Morris and see photos, follow Remembering a Life on Facebook and Instagram, or follow Morris V. Prout directly on Facebook and Instagram.